it's not that we cannot use maybe like other booleans. So maybe like the true, if you have a true or false one. So before you move into the solution, I want you to note that we can still use if else conditional statements with booleans. So maybe let's say boolean is raining, then we assign a true value here. So if you now check for the conditions, if it's raining, so maybe like tell a user to maybe stay indoors. So let's just say stay inside. Then else, maybe see out, tell a user to maybe like go swimming. So if you now run this, okay, so let me check if something is wrong here. So it was not declared if is raining, sorry. So if it's raining, then of course it's saying stay inside because our condition is set to true. So what happens if you now set this one to false? So if you now run that, you see that go swimming because this condition, the first condition has not been met. So you can again use a combined nested. You can nest booleans and integers together using a conditional operator. So maybe like if let's say if he has transport, so if now transport, so let's say is 50 Kenya shillings, that will be around $0.5. So we can say if it's raining and so let's say again we have transport, so let's just say to true because we are not sure if the amount is being shown. So if it's raining and has transport, of course, so we have transport, then maybe like if it's raining and maybe like this, then you can say maybe like call a cab. And then else, if this condition is met, then we can now go to the second or the else default one. So this is a boolean, we forgot to assign that. So it's saying now like go swimming because this condition is not true. So what happens if both conditions are true now? So if you now run, so it says call a cab. So this is how we nest different operators. So let's now go back into like solving the problem. So this problem we had here, the score one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create almost super scenario. So I'm going to go the winners game. So what this will do is I'm going to simulate almost this so that you can now think of how you're going to solve this. But I'm going to do almost a similar project here. So I'm going to say if, so first let's have maybe like team 1 scored maybe like 40, then we have the second team 2, which scored maybe 60, then we have the third team 3, which scored maybe like 80. So we have 3 teams. We want to find like who is the winner in this team. So let's say now like the winning team, we want to just check. So this is actually checking, it's just like checking greatest number between 3 teams using now a conditional operator. So we want to say if, so we're going to first declare a winning team here. So let's just say int like the winning or the champion, int champion. So we're going to say here that if team 1 is greater than team 2, so we are trying to compare the scores, and team 1 again is greater than team 3, then we can now tell the user that winning team, like the champions are team 1. So we are going to say that, so in fact we don't need this, so let's just remove that. So let's just see out without too many complications. So then else if going for team 2 is greater than team 1, and again the same team2 has to have a score greater than team, so let's say team3. Then you're just going to copy this so you can move fast, paste it there. So the winning team is team2, else, so just there, the winning team is team3. So we are not going to check for the third team, because by default, if this condition is not true, then the second conditions of course will actually like be conditional, and if it's not true, by default the third condition will be true. So instead of trying to recheck again the condition, then we can just directly use this here. So if you now run this, so let's see what will actually like be printed. So the champions are team3 because team3 has the highest score. So what happens if we add team2 with 40? Then the champions are team2. So what happens again? So let's see what will happen. Interesting here. The champions are team3. So by default, it will jump directly to this third one. So to make sure that we check again against these conditions, so that if we have these scores being all equal, then you can say like all the teams are actually the winners. So what do you think we can do? So we can use these AND operators and the OR operators. So try figure out and try to solve that. So the next thing I want us to do is I want us to build a simple calculator. So make sure you figure out so that when all these scores are equal, then all the teams must maybe say they are all the champions. So I want you to figure out that. So the next thing I want us to do is I want us to build a simple calculator. But first, let's solve this problem. I now hope that you've already figured out. So what I was trying to do here is we want to check for this condition. So let's say we just allow. So if the score is equal to pass mark, that is very okay. Then you score the pass mark. Now let's check for these other conditions. So if the score is greater than pass mark, so to make sure that we don't go past 100, then we can now say and score is less or equal to 100, then you are a genius. So then we can now check for this. If it is less than the pass mark, and score must of course be greater than 0 to make sure that greater, so let's say greater or equal to, because one can score 0. So with this one here, we are saying that if it is less or equal to 100, that means you can score up to 100. But if you now use the less one, that means you can only score up to 99. So make sure that you have the less or equal one. So the next thing is here is we want to check if this score is less than pass mark, and the score of course must be greater than 0, greater or equal to 0, then you failed. Then any other input must actually be invalid. So these are the only two things you had to do to check for this condition on this one. So if you now run this, you now find that it's invalid input because you cannot score 800. So if you now find score 80, then you scored pass mark. If you score now 100, then you see you are a genius. So what happens if we did not include the equal one here and then we scored 100? So let's see what will happen. Invalid input. So I want you to know that if you use the less or equal to, this means it will include up to 100. So that's all you actually had to do with that. So let's actually quickly now build the calculator. So we will want our user to actually get an input. So enter the first number. So int num1. So let's say num1. Then we have another one int. So let's say num2. Then we want our user to actually like enter an operator. So let's say, of course, an operator must be a character. So character. So let's just call it operator here, or let's just have it as OP. So the next thing we want to do is we want to have our user enter these two numbers, including the character here. So for the character, we are going to use maybe like the plus, minus, then we maybe like the multiplication and the division for now. So let's say, to make sure that we get user input, of course, we have to use the cin. So we are going to say to the user cout, maybe enter num1. So So let's just tell our user that this should be now our compiler in the next line. Then we can say cin maybe num1. Then after the first number, maybe like 5, so maybe like we can say we have maybe users enters 8, then we want to maybe like have our user enter an operator, then maybe now the second number, then we're going to have our result. So maybe like equal to maybe result. So let's use this. So we're going to say now enter. So after we've entered the first number, then we want to enter the operator. So we're going to use the character here. So cout enter operator. Then let's have it in the next line, our next new line. Then cin. Now we have to store the operator. Then we now like tell our user to enter the third number. So cout enter num2. So this should now be in the next line. So in our next line, then we have to store in cin num2. So this is actually the first step. So step 1, that was actually like getting and storing the user input. Then we would now want to have our result. So from this point, we can now declare our result. So we can just say a double because we are not sure if the user enters maybe like a decimal point. So we're going to have a result here so that we can now update our result. So the next thing here is we want to start doing the operation. So we are going to check for the operator. So if you're going to use the if statement, so if operator equal to, then maybe like say if it's equal to addition, then we can say num1, then add it to num2. Then we can store this in our result value here. So we're going to say now our result is num1 and num2. So then we can say else if the operator equal to maybe the subtraction, then we want to say now our num1 subtracted from num2, and then we want then we want to store this in our result value. Then so let's just have these operators. So else, so to just save on time because this is just the basic thing. So else maybe like we can tell the user cout invalid operator. So let's just have this for now. So let's just perform this. So let's just add one more for actually multiplication. So else if operator equal to maybe multiplication, so an asterisk, then we can now say our result, then assign it to maybe like num1 now multiplied by the second number num2. So if we now run this, we expect that we're going to get our user input. So let's have that under the character here. So that one now compile and run. Sorry, forgot here semicolon. Then I don't know why I'm forgetting this semicolons. So then you can now run this. Then we can maybe like enter num1 for enter operator. So let's perform multiplication. Enter num2 for. So then it's saying invalid operator. Okay, cool. So then again, before you run your code, so you can see that we have like this. So when we have two numbers of the same data type, so remember that to save on the memory space, you can maybe like do num1 and num2. Then so I just removed these spaces again so that we don't have invalid operators or anything. Then else invalid operator. So when you now run our code, you find that we are running num1 is 2, then operator is a subtraction, then 1, so the output is 1. So if you now try maybe like an invalid operator, so maybe like 60, then s, then 8, so you now have invalid operator printing also the memory address. So that was all you had to interact with nesting if else statements and also working with solving the other challenge using the comparison operator. So The next thing I want us to actually like get to look is using the switch statement. So we're going to do the switch statement, the while and then the do while. Then we now move to an awesome part that will now be the functions.